Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl. Join us for our 2024 Best Picture Revisiting series, where we'll be returning to all 10 nominees and talk about their nominations, their snubs, and our overall thoughts of the film. And as always, we're going to welcome in a guest to the show, and what better way to do this episode than someone who's holding over from last year.
Ooh, there we go. Josh, welcome in. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Josh is from the channel, The Film Spot. You guys should go check it out. Go give it a subscription. Josh is constantly dropping some great recommendations of J-horror movies and a lot of amazing indie hidden gems, especially lots of like weird, creepy horror stuff. So really happy to have you here today.
I don't know if it's a phase. Might be, but it's just whatever I want to watch, really.
Yeah, but it's always great recommendations. So go and check Josh out over at the Film Spot. And yeah, Josh is also a big fan of the Holdovers. So happy to have us a Holdovers fan to balance out Dyl's moderate dislike for the film.
Moderate, okay.
Moderate.
I'm like a 7. It's not overtly negative. It's just I think Best Picture is so stacked this year. Giving a 7 means you're like near the bottom of my list sort of thing. But as we always do, we kind of go over all the nominations here. And I guess the big one here, the reason why we're talking about this film, it's in Best Picture. So Josh, you're our guest here. What are your overall thoughts with the Holdovers? Like, why is this your favorite of the Best Picture nominees?
Well, I think that it's just a cozy movie. It just makes me happy. Like, I saw it back in November. I've only seen it once. But I just think back on it and I smile. That's more so than any of the other Best Picture nominees, really. It's like, it's not any specific moment or plot points. It's just, out of all the 2023 movies, it's a cozy holiday movie that I think it's for absolutely everybody. I think that's, like, it's not my favorite movie of all time or anything, not my favorite of the year even, but I think that it has a clear story arc. Like, we all know what's going to happen, but I think it balances the happy, sad, like, perfectly.
Bittersweet is the perfect way to describe the Holdovers. It's such a great balance of it'll make you laugh out loud, it'll make you tear up a little bit, and it just reminds you of that sort of melancholic mix of feelings that I know I always experience at the holidays when you feel another year pass by and you wonder what was the point of it all. And that's really what the film captures to me. It captures that sort of feeling of loneliness that we feel in those winter months, and how, you find those people that bring warmth, bring joy, and sometimes you find them in the most unlikely places. It's such a cozy is a great word for it. I can see this becoming a Christmas classic in coming years. The only thing is, it's a little bit sad for it to be like a real Christmas movie, because it kind of breaks your heart into pieces, and it's not the most joyous or celebratory film. It's just like, ooh, man, ow. But also, I think it's so good. I saw it at TIFF for the first time. I've since revisited it just one time, so I've seen it twice total, and it improved on the second viewing, even though I loved it at TIFF. It's definitely one of my favorites of the Best Picture lineup. I just think it's wonderful.
Yeah, the first time I saw the Holdovers was at the Virginia Film Festival, and it was my fourth film of the day. I'll admit I was a little tired, and I found myself a little underwhelmed with the film. Granted, the movie did end at 11 p.m., so it's late. I figured, you know what, let's give this another shot. So the second time I saw the Holdovers, I went with my mom. It was after a cycle class. Again, I was a little tired, and I found myself overwhelmed, but I did like it a little bit more. And now, watching it for the third time, I didn't do anything before. Wanted to make sure I was as awake as possible. I still found myself pretty tired during the movie, but I still continued to like it more than I did the previous times. Each time I've watched the Holdovers, it continuously rises up a little bit from like a weak 7 to like a solid 7 to where it's at now. And maybe it is the warm, cozy feeling that y'all are talking about before that just makes me a little bit drowsy. But I did like this. I want to say some positives here. I think the comedy works very well. I think this ensemble cast all is doing the best of what they're given with. I love Dominic in this. I think he is the giant standout of the film, where his character has the most to do, the biggest journey, has some of the best laughs, as well as having some of the best dramatic moments in the film. And each time I've watched this film, everyone who's around me raves. Film festival, standing ovation. Saw it with my mom. She liked it. She didn't love it, but she liked it more than me. Watched it with my grandparents the other day. They both adored it and have called it their favorite movie that they've watched in 2023. So obviously, I continue the trend here where I am the one who likes it the least with who's around me. But again, I think it's still a pretty good quantity of the film. Of the person who likes it the least is still giving it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, it's that type of movie where it's hard to hate it. It's hard to dislike it. I can see how people might not adore it, but I can't see how anyone would be like, "Oh, this is absolute garbage." I don't think that person exists. Have you guys seen some of the 70s movies that this is really like referencing, homaging, stuff like Harold and Maude or A New Leaf? Those films very much carry that same kind of 70s aesthetic, same vibe. Very different in storytelling, but the aesthetic is very similar. Specifically, Harold and Maude, I think of because of the use of Cat Stevens, which, man, the music use in this film is so good. So good. That Damien Jurado, I think, is the name of the artist who has one song in it that goes on repeat. Amazing. The Damien Jurado song, fantastic. The Cat Stevens stuff in it, so good. The song choice just uplifts the film so much, in my opinion. A great soundtrack can carry a film miles.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, we do for our personal awards music supervision, and even though this is a film that's probably not making many other categories for me, it's near the top for that one where I would, like you said, agree with all the music choices. I think they very much amplify the film. They throw you into the time period that you're supposed to be at, and I think that's one thing The Holdovers does phenomenally is make you feel like you're back in the day when this movie's taking place, between the editing, between the production design, the cinematography, the costume choices, and the music. It all just feels like it's a throwback, which just goes to the overall craft of the film being a giant positive.
So let's move on to the film's original screenplay nomination, because this is a film that lives and dies by that screenplay. It's really reliant on the character development, really reliant on the humor that comes from the dialogue, the very cerebral, intellectual nature of the comedy. So what are some of the major takeaways you guys have from the screenplay? Any scenes that stand out to you? Any moments that you really love? Or, as a counterpoint, things that might not work for you as well?
That there wasn't really too many scenes. I think it really is a culmination because, like I said before, it's about the characters revealing themselves throughout each scene. I think if I were to pinpoint one, maybe the Christmas party scene, because we've seen them in the school setting interacting with each other, and it's just so interesting to see, like you said, Matt, about the holiday time and just how some people can feel alone, and just seeing how they interact in that environment, in that very I don't know the word for it, in the residential house that they're in with these people who have this this suburban family that they're growing, and then they're kind of the outcast coming into this and trying to fit in. I think it mixes the again, the happy sadness of it, because we have Divine Joy Randolph's character just going through a lot there, and I don't know, I think it was great stuff there. But overall, in the screenplay, the characters, I think they were a little over the top, but because it's such a witty screenplay, and that it is still a bit formulaic, maybe in the middle with like how everything's revealed, I think that it all works together because they're not being over dramatic, because so many of the reveals are just like, they're heartfelt and the characters aren't taking themselves too seriously. So I'm not going in there trying to critique every little bit about the screenplay saying, oh, I've seen this before. It's just a fun, unique ride that it's fun to go along with the characters.
Mm-hmm. And I really like the characters in this film. While, like you said, sometimes they can be a little over the top, I think they all present something different, where Paul Giamatti is, I'll continue to say, maybe some people see it as a criticism, I see it as a positive, where he's throwing quips left and right. Each line he's giving is its own joke, where they kind of progress over the course of the film, where you can kind of get a feel for his style, and by the end you kind of expect what he's going to say, but he always surprises you with what reference that he's going to make, or anything that just comes out of his mouth is always just leaves you on the edge of your seat. And then for Dominic Sessa, I think the way the screenplay dives into his story, where they kind of show you up front, like, hey, something is off, but you don't know what it is. And as the story progresses, you kind of get more layers peeled back into the ultimate reveal near the third act once we get to Boston. And I guess my one fault for the screenplay would be with Divine Joy Randolph's character. I love her as an actress. She has usually been the highlight of whatever she's in, even for like The Idol, where it's a show that overall has a lot of messes, but she's still fantastic in that role. role. Here, I think that she's doing the best she can with her character, but I always just feel like we're reserved from something, like where she'll get a big moment where we can clearly see a lot's going on, but maybe it's me just wanting more and maybe a more direct answer. But I always feel like they cut away, or they cut just way too soon from whatever's going on. That scene at the party, we get like maybe 2 20-second moments with her showing her progressional breakdown that she's having at the party. There's a sequence with her sister later in the film where it shows you up front what it is, but they don't let the scene breathe at all. We're in and out of it way too soon, at least in my opinion, to really get a full grasp on it. But those are very minor issues with the film overall. I think it has a very great pace. There's sometimes where I do feel like this movie runs long, but there's nothing I would want to chop out. I feel like everything here is very necessary. Like Josh mentioned before, it's all scenes that continuously build up to reveal more about these characters throughout, and I think that the way it does play out at the end makes the maybe lull moments of the film all worth it at the end of the day.
I think you're the only person I've ever heard, and maybe will ever hear, say that Divine Joy Randolph's character is underwritten in the film. I have not heard one other person say this, but you've maintained your position on it through all 3 watches, so I trust that it's not just a fluke of being tired or anything. It's,
for me,
you've been continuous.
For me, like, I think her performance is great. I think what she has to do works so well. I just want more from her character, and I always feel like we just don't have enough. Like, we hear up front her son passed away, or her husband or the man that she had the kid with passed away very early on, so she's lived a very reserved life, and we get to see little fragments of those lives. Maybe it's just because she is the supporting player, she's not a lead of this film. To me, I think that she should have been like a co-trio type lead instead of a very, very distant, because she can go 20, like it feels like 20 minutes without any screen time at a moment, other than maybe a shot of her cooking in the kitchen, where I would have liked to see some more, learn more about her character, especially when she goes off with her sister. Would have loved to see an additional scene there, because like I could understand, like, oh, this is Giamatti's story, we're only going to be with him throughout, or with Dominic Sessa throughout, but we do get that one scene where she has the baby clothes, so I would have liked an additional scene to show, like, hey, this is what her time with her sister was like, this is how the positives were, here's how the negatives were, because at least to me, what kind of jumped out was, this was her first time going there since her son passed away, and then I would have liked to see a little bit more of what played out through the discussions with family, with, like, something that's so traumatic that occurred in your life, and all we get is one, I would maybe say, a minute-long sequence with no dialogue where there's a cry, there's a hug, that's it, we get out.
I guess maybe part of the reason why she's not as present is because the reason she's holding over is her own choice, that she is not going anywhere else. She has the power to leave at any time. She can leave. She's not being forced to be here like Dominic Sessa's character, like Paul Giamatti's character. She is choosing to isolate herself during the holidays out of mourning, out of loss, out of grief. And so as the film progresses and as she begins to open up and feel the warmth and compassion of companionship with these other people, that's as we get to kind of see her more, because up until that point, she has been purposefully shutting herself off from the world. We'll talk a little bit more about Davine's performance a little bit later, but I just want to say my favorite moments in the screenplay actually don't come from the dialogue. They come from small visual cues that are littered throughout, such as a moment where the Paul Giamatti character begins to soften to Dominic Sessa's character when he finds a bottle of antidepressants in his room and realizes, I take the exact same antidepressants as you. And it's such a funny moment to bond over the fact that you're on the same medication as someone. But it's that moment, that small bit of understanding that comes there, that maybe this kid's not rotten to the core. Maybe he's like me. Maybe he's just going through a really hard time right now, like I did in my life when I hit someone with a car. And there's just small little bits like that throughout. The happy, sad moments like you've been talking about, Josh. The things that are just small, unspoken visual cues that show the deep sadness and then acceptance that each character is feeling throughout the film. Those have got to be my favorite moments in the script. Even if you take out all of the quips from Paul Giamatti, all of the very silly, very witty intellectual stuff, you still have a very human story of connection. And, you know, I love when you strip away all the layers of a screenplay, and at the core, you've got solid gold. And I think the core of The Holdovers is just golden. Thematically, it's just beautiful. And it all comes together so beautifully in the end because the core of it is so fundamentally good.
I talked a little bit before about the pacing of the film, where sometimes it may feel like a lull, and I guess that plays over to the editing. To me, it's not a major issue. Like I mentioned before, I think that it all pays off at the end of the day, but to talk about its editing nomination that it got at the Oscars, a part of that could be due to all the cross resolves that we get throughout the film, but I think the true highlight of the editing comes in a sequence towards the middle of the film where I guess it's the conclusion of a lunch. I'm trying to remember what exactly was happening. I think they were eating at the dinner table, and Dominic Sessa's character, Angus, goes to make a phone call, and him and Paul Giamatti's character have like a little chase throughout the school. An injury happens, and then it's a real throwback to like what an older type movie would have, with the type of editing that we have, the comedic effect, the comedic timing for the editing, and then the sequence at the hospital, and then a bar, and then going back the next day to find out that someone maybe puked in the gym. I think that sequence is the true highlight for the editing for me. But throughout, the cross resolves were very pretty, and like I said, sometimes the pacing seemed a little bit off. I don't know if that's an editing issue for me or a screenplay issue, because like I said, there's nothing I really would remove, but it did feel a little bit longer, even though it had a shorter runtime than some of the other Best Picture nominees. It
likely is the editing, I would say, because it's often hard to pinpoint what good editing is, or you know, where good editing lies, because good editing is often invisible. So I like when we look at these editing nominees every year thinking, what did those films do that make it good editing, that make it top 5 editing of the year? And The Holdovers is the one that's in the lineup that's not obvious. You know, with Oppenheimer, you're cross-cutting between timelines. That is very obviously difficult to do. Poor Things, the way that it cuts between different formats, the way that it balances the fisheye lens and the black and white and the color and the choices of when to cut to each of those sequences or different formats, very obvious, very flashy editing. The editing in The Holdovers is so not flashy, and it kind of sticks out in this lineup as like that's a strange nomination. But I think that the beauty of the editing here is not in the flashiness of it, but in the choosing when not to cut. Because you look back at 70s films like it's kind of imitating, like it's homaging, and those films don't cut very much. They play out scenes in 2 shots. They play out scenes in wides. That entire time was marked by, I mean, you're shooting on film, you're not shooting as much as you are with digital, whereas with digital you can just shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and make all your choices in post. You know, back in the 70s and before, of course, you were much more careful about what you shot, and so a lot of the time you see scenes kind of covered in just a couple of shots.
Yeah, I think that a lot of this marketing, they were saying, oh, it has, you know, the 70s filmic look. And I don't know exactly what it did to deserve the Oscar nomination. I mean, I think I agree with you, Matt, that when a movie doesn't make you think about the editing and you are immersed in the story, it's definitely 100% doing something right in that way. A lot of the times, like, a person's job on a movie or any sort of production is to make it as seamless as possible so that you don't think about it. So yeah, as for the nomination, it's like, I don't know if people just love, you know, 70s look, you know, that fake film grain and everything. And Dyl, you said the cross dissolves. I mean, I can do cross dissolves in iMovie. It's not that hard. But like, I don't know. I think the entire atmosphere of the movie, like I've said before, the coziness of it, that's all because of the editing and just choosing where to put things in the sequence. And I think just thinking about, like you said, Matt, when they don't cut, thinking about how the scenes play out, and thinking about maybe also with like the shots just of the surrounding atmosphere and everything, how those all get put together to make this cozy feeling. It was all just well thought out with the feeling in mind, and so I think that's why it could be in that category. Yeah.
So let's talk Paul Giamatti, the big showy part of the movie that everyone's been talking about, who looks like very possibly might be an Oscar-winning performance. It seems like things might be trending that direction, which I definitely wouldn't have expected when I first saw the film. But hey, good for Paul Giamatti. I am a big fan of Paul Giamatti. So how do you guys feel about the performance?
I think that Paul's a gem. I think he's come a long way since being Rhino. I feel like when I heard Paul Giamatti, my mind always used to go to Rhino, but now it's going to The Holdovers, so I think that's a good change in my life. But I don't know. I remember seeing the trailers, and then I remember people seeing it at TIFF. Even you, Matt, you loved it at TIFF. It won the TIFF People's Choice Award, right?
Second.
And so, second? It came second?
Second
I'm
place,
just misremembering. Yeah. I just know there was so much hype at TIFF and everything. And I remember I saw the trailer, and I was like, oh, this is such an Oscar baity movie, right? And then I go in, and I actually do love it. So kind of like defy those expectations, just because, yeah, Paul Giamatti, he's so charming. He has such a funny look to him. He's a funny looking guy in the most respectable way possible. And it's just a great layered performance. Like, you can see why everybody in the movie dislikes him. And yeah, totally. If I was a student in that class, of course, yeah, that guy's an asshole. What the heck? But along with like the writing that just develops every character throughout the movie, his performance also added just like interesting layers that might not have been there in the writing in the first place. Like, he's so quippy with his peers and with his students, but at the same time it makes it feel like he's almost like toying with them because of his own insecurities. It feels like the comedic moments, even though they are very funny, sometimes they feel bittersweet because you like see that he's kind of like masking some of his sadness with his comedy. And so I think, yeah, he just does such a good job at that. And he was just so fun to watch. I think he'd be well deserving of the win there. I'd root for him there.
To the point of him being funny looking, in the TIFF world premiere Q&A, someone in the audience asked Alexander Payne if Paul Giamatti's eyes are really like that. And he was like, no, they haven't been hiding Paul Giamatti's lazy eye for 20 plus years in his career. It's not like that.
Yeah, and I mean, to go off of Josh's comments about Giamatti, I think that he's really great in the role. He would personally not be the one I would pick out of the bunch, but I'm not upset at his nomination. The first few times I saw this movie, I kind of just thought he was the jokester. I didn't really get much of his dramatic elements to his story. Like, I saw that they were there, they just weren't resonating with me as much. But on viewing number 3, I did very much connect with his dramatic moments in his journey as well, where it's not just the teacher that's making quips left or right. There is a little bit more substance to that character. I think the closing act works so much for his character, where maybe I'm a little let down for some of the other people that we travel with throughout the film, but I think the ending very much works for Paul. I think, just to reference back to our Barbie episode where there's so many quotable lines, Holdovers has those as well, and if I had to just pick one line reading from Giamatti that was my favorite, it's when he just goes about saying about the principal, how he's known him his whole life, and he's the only one who has...
and always have been... penis cancer.
Yes. And he's the only one who has the experience to do it, and I just feel like that very much just fit his character, because throughout the film, he's using all these big textbook words and referencing historical stuff from his teachings, and I just like at the end, it's meshing both worlds together, where he's making a dig while also staying true to his character. Like, it wasn't completely out of left field, which I very much appreciated.
Mm-hmm. I really do enjoy Paul Giamatti's performance in this, and I feel like you could swap a lot of his dialogue with dialogue from Jeffrey Wright's character in American Fiction, and the swap would be perfect. Like, a lot of the moments of Paul Giamatti insulting his coworkers feel exactly like the scene at the beginning of American Fiction where Jeffrey Wright's like, oh, that was a nice book, you could pick it up at the airport. Stuff like that. It feels like that's things that Paul Giamatti would be saying in this. But his performance is really layered, and thinking more and more about it, I think one of the keys to his performance is the scene where we see the box in his office of all of the books, the same book that he gives as a present every single time, because this is a person who doesn't know how to connect with other people. He doesn't know how to connect other than through things he enjoys. He really is lost in the world and has just become a very lonely person because he can only view the world through the lens of what he likes and through nothing else. He's incapable of making those connections until he's not. And suddenly, he becomes this warm, very personable man. I love him in this movie. I love Paul Giamatti overall, and I am a little disappointed that this might be the thing that he ends up winning the Oscar for, because, goddamn, he was in Sideways. That's one of my favorite performances of all time, and he didn't even get an Oscar nomination for that. It pains me. My
It
God. Have you guys
pains you?
seen?
Yeah,
It
I see what
pains
you did
me.
there.
Yeah, okay.
It pains me. Yeah, have you guys seen Sideways?
I have not seen.
I haven't either.
You gotta watch Sideways. If you want more Paul Giamatti being a douche to everyone around him and just being a grumpy asshole, but a grumpy asshole who's also a very sad person, Sideways is the movie to watch. It's incredible, so highly, highly recommend. But we've talked Paul Giamatti, so let's get into the sweeper of the season. Sorry, Dylan. Davine Joy Randolph. She's the emotional core of this movie. So how are we feeling about her work here? What does she do in this film that stands out, and what makes her performance shine for you guys?
Yeah, I guess I'll start just because I talked about it a little bit before, so mine will be kind of short and sweet. I do really like her as an actress. I like what she's doing here. I just wish there was more that she was given to do. And I guess for the season sweeper comment, like, yeah, for people out there who may just be tuned into this episode, I haven't believed it all away. I still think there's a small shot BAFTA goes elsewhere because BAFTA's weird. But I think of our nominee, she would be my second choice of the bunch. I still think that she's really great in this role. Not upset with her nomination at all. I just, like I mentioned before, just wish there was a little bit more to this character. She didn't feel like a stereotype at sometimes with just really nothing much to do. But overall, I think that Randolph is again showing how great of an actress she is. I've loved her throughout her career. Dolomite, I think, is one of her best works. I've mentioned The Idol before. Not really good show, but she is just killing it in her role there, showing her commanding force. And here we get a really different side to her because she's always playing a more comedic role. She's always playing a little bit more of a louder role. Here she's very much reserved. She has those times like at the party sequence where she can't just give it all, but she's very much doing something that we haven't really seen from her before, which I really did appreciate while watching The Holdovers.
Yeah, I see what you mean about wanting more, because I agree. I think that I honestly, thinking about it now, I would want more from her character, because I think her character is probably the most devastating out of all of the other ones, because she has the most recent and like the most direct connection to like the environment that she's around, with her son passing away and everything. And all that is just culminating in her staying in the same place where she interacted with her son and just not letting go. And that's her whole character, is really just not letting go of the past and not realizing that she needs companionship and what good that can do for her. And I don't know, I just love the layers of her performance, of like the contrasting of her just, trying to play it cool. She'll like casually talk about it while they're watching TV. And then that contrasted with her breaking down at the party. I think it's great. I think she commanded every scene she was in. And I don't know, there's just a lot going on with her character. And now that I'm thinking about it, Dylan, you are making me realize I did want more from her character. But yeah, all the characters, they're looking for connection. Not to belittle like the other two and what they need and everything, but I just thought hers was the most impactful in my opinion.
I agree with you, Josh. Her grappling with grief is very much my favorite part of the film. It is the emotional core. And yeah, Dylan, you might be right. She could have had a few extra scenes for sure. I will concede on that, because I would never say no to more Divine Joy Randolph. And I think a major theme of the film is that after the holidays, Dominic Sessa will go back to life as it was. Paul Giamatti will go back to teaching. He'll be unimpacted. He won't be impacted by the events of this holiday. I mean, he will be because of what happens at the very end of the film. But for the most part, everyone in this story will be able to return to their life as it was, except her, because she will never have her son back. That's a direct impact of the way that the educational institution treated her son and the institutional racism that kept him out of the schools and forced him to be drafted into the military. So that's definitely a major theme throughout the movie, in my opinion. And her work is exceptional. You guys have mentioned the party scene multiple times. That's her Oscar clip. It's brilliant, heartbreaking work. And there are multiple other moments in the film where she says something and I just feel like a gasp of air escaped me, where I'm just like, oh my God. Ooh, ow. And when we talk about that happy, sad feeling, she's the sad part of that happy, sad. She has some lovely, fun moments, but for the most part, your heart hurts for her. She is the heartache in this very melancholic film. And without her, the film is nothing, in my opinion.
And I mean, just to talk about it one more time, just because she doesn't have more to do doesn't mean I don't like what she's doing or I think she's bad in the film. I know that's been misconceived on our discourse over a few times. Like, oh, you hate the holdovers, you hate Divine Joy Randolph. Like, no, I just wish there was more to go on with that character. But y'all have mentioned the party scene. I think the scene I referenced before with the baby clothes is the big heartfelt moment for her character, where we do see, I guess, the culmination of her character, her journey of moving on, giving the stuff away that she's kept near and dear to her sister, because her sister's about to have a child. And then the reveal towards the end of the film where if it's a boy, the middle name's going to be Curtis, named after her son. I think is at least for me, were the big emotional tug-string moments, a little bit more so than the party sequence, even if that sequence was impactful as well.
No, I agree. The ending where her sister says the middle name will be Curtis was just like, oh my God. My God. Yeah. So, good shout out there. And let's talk Dominic Sessa, shall we?
Yeah.
Dominic Sessa.
Standout.
He came pretty close to a nomination, which is pretty wild. I have to ask, before we get into like favorite moments, things about his performance that we enjoyed, do you guys agree with his placement in supporting actor, or do you think that he would have been a lead?
I think, to me, it's just how do you go about it. If you think Brad Pitt's a supporting, Sessa's a supporting. If you think Brad Pitt's a lead in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Sessa's a lead in this film. So I think it's just, if you have consistency with it, however you stand on those arguments, as long as you stay the same with both of those, and I'm sure there's other stuff out there too that you can use as an example, I'm fine with it. Personally, I would see him, at least on this viewing, I felt like it was more his story, so I would put him in lead, but I fully get why people would put him in supporting, and especially why the Academy had his place in there.
Yeah, I agree. I would definitely place him in lead. I think that just at the beginning, when all of the students are still there, we're kind of following his story, and Paul Giamatti honestly starts as kind of just like, the grumpy teacher who's there watching over them and everything. I think we still follow him throughout the whole movie along with Paul Giamatti. All I'm trying to say is I think he's a lead, like, pretty definitively in my opinion.
I would argue supporting. I think he's supporting for the same way, like The Favorite. I think back to The Favorite, the same way that I feel like even though the main character might be Emma Stone, Olivia Colman is the lead of that movie. She is where the focus is, and despite having equal screen time to each other, Paul Giamatti and Dominic Sessa both have about 45% of the screen time in the movie. I do actually think the transformation that we see is Paul Giamatti's. He is the protagonist, even if he might not be always the point of view character in the film. So Dominic Sessa, to me, he is a lens that we view this story through, but I don't think I do see it as his story in particular. And I've always, through every viewing, kind of been like, yeah, he's the supporting role. And to your point, Dylan, I would also say Brad Pitt is a supporting role. Just same reasons, they might have similar screen time, but you can really feel where the story is, where the focus is of the story. And to me, it's not on Dominic Sessa, although he is very good in the film. What a great discovery.
Yeah, and I guess for Sessa lead supporting, the last thing to mention there, I just think it's what adds more cloudiness to it is kind of like Josh mentioned, the opening act is very much Sessa's story, while the closing act is very much Giamatti's story. So it's kind of which one do you weigh more in terms of the film's overall scope? Because like I mentioned before, I think I can see the angle for both. While personally I would put him lead, I'm not losing sleep over him being in supporting. But to your point, yes, what a great find. Another one for the recent history of if only the Oscars could give some more love to younger actors, because while he wouldn't make my 5 in supporting actor, he may make my 5 in lead actor, and he's still, I just think, really good in this film. I think the way that he's able to portray so many different emotions, he nails the comedic moments. The dramatic and more sad moments are very effectively communicated to the viewer, which is me. But I just think that he has so many of these standout moments of the film. Like I mentioned before, Giamatti has so many memorable lines, but if you're going to ask me to point to a scene that I really like, almost all of them are revolving around Angus, whether it's the scene I mentioned before about having to go to the hospital and that sequence where he breaks his arm, or the scene at the beginning where all the boys are kind of just walking outside, talking about, hey, why are we here? And then walking through the snow. I just think there's so many elements of this film where if it wasn't someone as talented as Dominic Sessa, where just this film just wouldn't work.
Yeah, I definitely think that he's nominee worthy. I don't think I'm losing sleep because he wasn't. But I think he had the perfect look for the movie, at least. I think that he had like that nerdy kid look to him who's very snarky, but he was a bit too silly for me at times. Maybe when he was trying to act serious, I couldn't take him like 100% serious because, I don't know, some of his other moments were very childish. But it was an interesting, like, adolescent, childlike performance because it's like sometimes it feels like he's trying too hard to emphasize like a connection or that he's like trying to be vulnerable, but at the same time, again, like I said, it's not a movie that's really focusing on those big moments because it's really earned in the end. And those are really just nitpicks for me because like his wittiness was phenomenal. He did so well with the comedic timing of the writing that he was given. And I thought it was a lot of fun to see him with the classmates at the beginning. I think that was a highlight. And then, yeah, the emotional ending. I've said time and time again, I think it's like the best ending of 2023. I thought it was great.
Some people may call this a snub. I guess I'll just say up front, I don't really think this is a snub. He wouldn't be anywhere near my personal list. But if you're going off of punditry and where he probably stacked up, he was probably number 6, 7, 8. So he was one of the next few in line. So I guess how do y'all feel about his exclusion here? Then what was y'all's thoughts on his overall work here with the Holdovers?
I feel similarly to the editing nomination and my thoughts where I think that, again, it's really subtle, and the things that you don't think about are why it really shows how he's a strong director. If he was nominated, I would have understood, but I can't really say he's a snub as well. I think that's, again, he does a masterful job at getting the performances from the actors and showcasing them, knowing what to show to get those quieter moments to kind of let us see through the characters and what's going on the inside. But yeah, I agree. I don't think that's it's really a snub in my opinion. He shaped the atmosphere, like I said, but yeah.
I agree with everything you're saying, even down to I feel the same way I feel about the editing nomination, where it's invisible work. The directing is really, it's not flashy. It's just kind of there. He carries us through the film, and he does it beautifully. He emulates that 70s style through all aspects of it. That shows really strong work. But that said, you know, Alexander Payne has been nominated in the past for films that are, in my opinion, a little bit stronger than The Holdovers. I love Sideways. I love The Descendants. I love Nebraska. He's doing very similar stuff in all of those films where it's not flashy work, but it's consistent. He establishes a tone, and he guides the audience through this emotional journey, and he does it with an invisible hand that you really don't feel. You never feel manipulated in an Alexander Payne film, even in the most emotional moments. You never feel as though he's pushing at your feelings. It just flows organically.
Now that moves us into, I think, the funnest part of this Best Picture Revisiting series. I mean, talking about the movies is fun, but now we get to hear our guest Josh's preferential ballot. So, I heard a little birdie told me that he has not seen all 10 films. Which ones have you not seen yet?
No, sir. I am planning on watching Past Lives shortly, as well as Zone of Interest whenever a showtime is more convenient to me. But I can't say I'm really running out to watch Maestro. I really just, you know, after many years of trying to hit every single Best Picture nominee, this one I'm just like, I don't really have a huge desire to see it, so I might just not. But we'll see how it goes.
Fair enough. I say give it a shot. I think it's better than people are giving it credit for.
Okay.
And then as someone who would have at the bottom of their Best Picture lineup, I would say if you have the time, go watch it. Form your own opinion. Because who knows, you may be like Matt and think it's one of the better ones of the nominees, or you may find with a consensus have it near the bottom. I think it's a step up from A Star is Born in terms of the technical craft work and the direction. But in terms of like a screenplay and plot, stuff like that, I think it's a massive step down. Enough about Maestro. We're here talking about The Holdovers. So, Josh, what is your number 7 from the films that you have seen that are nominated for Best Picture?
Okay, my number 7, I think, will have a lot of people up in arms. I think Poor Things is my number 7. I'm very middling on Poor Things. This could be a whole other conversation. I've been encouraging my friends to go watch it just because I want to talk to them about it, because I feel like an idiot with how many people love this movie. And I'm just like, I feel like I knew what was going to happen the whole time. I feel like every male character that was introduced, I was like, I know what's going to happen here. I get it. But it looks beautiful. It looks absolutely beautiful. I'll stop talking about it. I thought it was beautiful,
hey man,
that's
you know. Fine. We all deserve to be wrong sometimes.
Oh, okay. I see how it is. Okay.
All right, number 6.
Number 6, is Barbie, but honestly, 2 through 6, pretty close. Pretty close. I mean, Barbie's such a good time. Barbie is such a good time. Everybody knows this. It is number 6, but I mean, it's so fun to watch. Yeah. Number 5, I got American Fiction. Again, nice. I think it's... Oh, Jeffrey Wright is phenomenal. Jeffrey Wright is so good. I love him in everything that he's in. The entire cast is really great. Yeah, I saw that one a bit ago. I think that it does stick out in my mind. I think it's just such a fun watch. And again, it has a lot of good bittersweet moments. Just like this, I guess American Fiction has a lot of more in-your-face dramatic moments than The Holdovers does, which may be the less subtlety of it. Maybe, I don't know, put it a bit lower on the list, but still, it is a great film.
I guess before we move to number 4, I have to know, with everyone who watches American Fiction, what are your thoughts on Sterling K. Brown? Because I love him, but a lot of other people out there really don't like his nomination.
I feel biased because I like him in everything that he's in. I just watched Biosphere, and that movie's great. I'm a very big science fiction guy. That just was a perfect watch for me at the time. And I think Sterling K. Brown is he's great in everything. He's just so charismatic. And I like his quiet moments because he feels like he commands even the quiet moments. Just, I don't know, just his presence is very commanding. And yeah, he's great.
All right, number 4.
Number 4, Anatomy of a Fall. Again, all these ones are so close, but Anatomy of a Fall, so well constructed. Performances, absolutely phenomenal. These two pretentious people who just are so annoying and full of themselves, but in a great way for the movie. I think some of the reveals where it was it is very convenient that there's these recordings, in my opinion. The way it played out, I was like, oh, okay, sure. Of course they were secretly had a recording when they were that's the one thing that would be the dirt on her. But it was great though. It was so good. And just the multiple languages. I always love movies with multiple languages. It's always so fun to hear that. And phenomenal dog performance. Everybody's saying it. Phenomenal. Snoop.
Mm-hmm.
Messi's the actor. Snoop's the actor.
role. Yeah, and then number 3, Oppenheimer. I feel like every time I talk about a movie, I always go with the nitpick first. I think it's a bit too long. I think Robert Downey Jr.'s parts drag a bit. But yeah, I think after the bomb dropped, there was a lot going on after that, and I was just I don't know. I don't know what I was like. I was just waiting for the movie to end at that point. But again, still, that I always say my nitpicks first, but I thought it was a phenomenal movie. Incredible performances. Christopher Nolan. I'm a big Nolan head. I'll admit it. But yeah,
we've had lots of Nolan conversations over the years.
Exactly. And this is I'm the big sci-fi guy, and I always just love dissecting cool concepts, and this is the one biopic. But still, it is masterfully done. I think it's great. Yeah.
So top 2 time.
Top 2, we get number 2, Killers of Flower Moon. I mean, again, super long. I think Leonardo DiCaprio's character was what is he even doing in this movie? I don't even know. Is he the protagonist? No, not really. But again, nitpick out of the way first. I think that it's such an empowering film. It's so impactful, and the ending, crazy ending. I just love when a story just you think it's gonna go one way. You think it's going to maybe follow some conventions, but then Scorsese's just no, I'm just going to do something wild at the end, and I respected it. And just the movie as a whole, love crime dramas unveiling themselves, and Lily Gladstone, she better win everything. Yeah.
So that means
you're
number
team
1.
Lily Gladstone.
I am team Lily Gladstone. Oh, yeah.
Woo.
Definitely.
Ooh. Okay.
Well,
it
makes sense. He has Poor Things at 7. He can't join
it does
the
make
Stone
sense.
train
He's
here.
He's got Poor Things as low as it can go.
Yep. And then number 1's The Holdovers. It's not my favorite of the year, but I think.
What is your favorite of the year?
Oh, not Shin Godzilla. Godzilla -1.
Nice.
Phenomenal.
Nice.
So good. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I remember you telling me when you were going to see it, but.
Oh, I saw it opening day.
Oh yeah.
Oh
okay. Yeah. We got to talk Godzilla at some point then.
I know. Oh, so good. But
how do you feel about that visual effects nomination?
Oh, so happy for them. They got something in there. Yeah, it was phenomenal.
Well, that has reached the conclusion of our episode revisiting the holdovers in our Best Picture series. For everyone out there, if you made it this far, consider dropping a like, a subscription, because up next, we are talking the zone of interest. And who knows, by the time we talk about that, maybe Josh has watched it. We can include his thoughts with the film in that episode there. But until next time, my name's Dyl.
And my name is Matt, and that's Josh, and this has been Fantasy Filmball.